It is 8:30. Morning, Nokutenda. I see you in the room.
Good morning, Vinny. Good morning, studio.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this session. This is a live session that I decided to run, and maybe it may assist any of us that are in the room that may be struggling a little bit with utilizing Odoo for planning and scheduling. What I'm really going to just be doing in this session is I'm going to be giving you tips of how you can go about successfully utilizing the system in order to do your daily planning and scheduling. One of the most important things that we've been talking about as a management team, as well as a exco, is the issue of visibility. Basically, what visibility means is that what visibility means is the capability for people to see into what you are doing. And this is very important at an organizational level because not only does your department head need to see what's going on with you, but your colleagues, your peers, ExCo members, various people within the organization may need to know and understand what you are doing. So, because at the end of the day, we work as one collaborative team. So visibility is such an incredibly important thing. Like I said, not only for the purpose of your department head, but other department heads, ExCo members, and various other people in the organization that may need to know and understand what you have scheduled, what you have planned, and what you are busy with. So, so the purpose of the session, essentially, at the end of the day, is just to provide tips and assist, maybe to showcase how, for example, I do my planning, and maybe you can get something out of there that can help you with your own planning. As we go through the session, please feel very, very free to put up your hand to ask questions. I will start off with a very short presentation before I go into the demo of how I do my planning and how I think through my planning and how I then implement it in the system. So while I'm on the PowerPoint presentation, and even when I'm now on the demo, I may not see your hand as it goes up if you're using the emojis on the system. So what might be best is for you to just open your mic and to just interrupt me, to make your question or to make an observation or to make a comment. Please feel very free to do that. I think what we want is for the session to be useful for those that are attending it. And so just feel very, very free to go ahead and do that as I go along. I am recording the session, so I will share the session recording hereafter with the department heads, and I am sure in turn they will also share the recording with you. The last thing is I will also take this recording and upload it into our e-learning system, and it will also be available as an e-learning. So you can also review any of the issues that we cover here. I think if there are no questions, we can kick off and go ahead. I'm sure everyone has understood the purpose of this session. So again, just feel very free at any time to stop me and to ask any questions. So as I kick off, I'm going to start with a very brief overview presentation. And all this is designed to do is just to help us to contextualize the demo that I'm going to do thereafter. And in the demo, all I'll be doing is just showing you and giving you tips of how I do my planning. And we can also exchange ideas. Maybe you've got better ways that you're doing it. Let's also make it an idea exchange. I'm going to just switch over to my presentation. And as I say, once I'm in the presentation, I will not be able to see any hands that go up. So please just go ahead and open your mic whenever you need to. So this session is all about using Odoo for successful planning and scheduling. And that's what we're going to be covering today. What is the purpose of this live session? Number one, I wanted to say, why are we wanting to track productivity in Telco 1058? As you know, Telco 1058 is our strategy that we are pursuing. It's our 5-year strategy, which we started last year. And productivity is one of the key pillars of the strategy. Productivity basically means all the right people doing the right things at the right time. So it means every single member of Team Telco doing what they're supposed to be doing, when they're supposed to be doing it, how they're supposed to be doing it. And that's how we're going to achieve our Telco 1058 vision. As you can well imagine, if we have members of Team Telco that are not doing what they're supposed to be doing at the time that they're supposed to be doing it, how they're supposed to be doing it, that will then lead us, the whole train of Telco 1058 to fall off the tracks. So this is why productivity tracking is going to be very important for us as we pursue this vision. And the system that we have chosen to do all of this productivity tracking in is Odoo. So the rest of this live session, I'm going to talk less about department and organization and focus very much on the individual. So I'm going to talk very much about personal planning rhythms, how to engage with your tasks in the system, how to schedule or plan your tasks in the system, how to give feedback through timesheets on the tasks, and then also what you can expect as an output in terms of rating and feedback on each of your tasks. I ran a similar session for the FinCom department the other day. So some of the things I'm saying will be familiar to those that were in that FinCom session. But what I'm hoping will be different in this session is that we can take more time to discuss how the system works and how to do specific things in the system. So feel free once again to ask your questions as we go along. So like I said, Telco 1058 requires that every single person within Team Telco is productive. And so how we're going to be tracking and measuring that productivity is through 4 pillars of productivity. The first one is projects. What is a project? A project is basically a collection of related tasks that are designed to achieve a particular goal. So within Odoo, we group all of the tasks and the things that need to be done into projects. And projects, very loosely speaking, in this particular case, are just a grouping of related tasks that achieve a particular goal. Okay, what is a task? Okay, a task basically then is the basic unit of work that must be done. So examples of tasks in the different departments. In sales, a task could be one of your activities that are in your action priority matrix. For example, in the sales action priority matrix, lead generation is one of your activities. And so that, therefore, that will be a task in the system. Another example from customer service center could be that in your action priority matrix or in your daily operations, one of the things that you're supposed to do is call clients. So that is a task within the system. My apologies. I just need to put that on mute. So that is a task. Maybe in the accounting department, a task would be, for example, capturing cash books. So that would be a task. So anyway, a task is a unit of work that is allocated to either the group or the individual. And all of this is grouped together in a project, which is then the related group of tasks. Then a scheduled plan or a scheduled task, basically what that is you take that task that has been, that unit of work that has been allocated either to you or to your group, and you and you put a specific date and a specific time when that particular thing will be carried out. So a scheduled task is one which has been allocated a date and a time. And in Odoo, that gets done in the planner. Okay, so projects get done in projects. Tasks also are under the projects module. A scheduled plan is in the planning module. Okay, and then lastly, timesheets. Okay, a timesheet is basically a detailed, accurate, and honest accounting of what was actually done. So when you look at the first three things that we've talked about, the 4 pillars: projects, tasks, and schedule plans, these are all projections. This is like a plan. It's, you haven't yet done the stuff. You are thinking that this is what you're going to do. This is how you're going to structure your day, your hour, your week. But then at the end of the day, the timesheet now is actually an accounting of what was actually done. And that accounting should be accurate, it should be honest, and it should actually relate to the things that were actually done. Let me let some people in. All right. Okay. Then the last thing, which is not really a pillar of the productivity, but is something that is going to happen, is that after each task has been completed, depending on who has allocated you the task or who did the task, you can allocate yourself a task. A task can be allocated to you by your department head. A task can be allocated to you by a peer, maybe because you guys are working on something together. So tasks can come from many different directions. But at the end of the day, obviously, the important thing is to give feedback on that task through the timesheets. And also, when that task is completed, that task will be rated. Why are we rating tasks? Because we don't want to wait until you are at your half year performance review before we start saying, oh no, provide these things, you don't do them very well, or these things you do them very well. We don't want to wait until then. We want performance assessment feedback to be a continuous cycle that we undertake throughout the year, throughout the week, throughout the month, throughout the year. And so that our performance assessments at the half yearly mark, whenever we do them, as you know, we do them twice a year, or you should have one at least with one-on-one with your department heads, and then another one which is a 360 where you get rated by a number of your peers. We don't want to wait until those occasions to start saying, oh no, you need to improve on this, you need to improve on that. We want to be fair to each other and give each other enough time to actually complete or to actually improve. That's the word I'm looking for, to actually improve on things that we are doing. So these are the 4 pillars of productivity. So that's really the end of the maybe more formal part of the presentation. I just wanted to introduce some concepts and then now go to the demo. While we're still on the concepts part, are there any questions about projects, tasks? The other day when I was doing this with FinCom, Mr. Dube just reminded me to mention that tasks are also in the system. There's 2 types of tasks. There's tasks and then there's subtasks. And all of these are related there, but at the end of the day, all it is that a subtask is a subdivision of a major task. So you might find that a piece of work has been allocated to a group under a task. And then under that task, you raise many subtasks for the individual allocations of work. And I'll show you obviously all of that just now. But I want to maybe address how that applies to you personally and how you look at that and how you search for that in the system. So before we go to the demo, are there any questions where I'll then now start working through the individual bits and pieces so that you are a bit more confident about how to handle them? Please feel free. And again, as I said, this is not just a one-way thing. There's ways that I do things that might work for me, but maybe for someone else, they've figured out a better way of doing these things. And maybe I can also mention that in the e-learning system, there is a course called Get Organized, which helps you to think through how you can customize your own planning process and make sure that you have a way that you are planning that is very specific and that works for you. So if you have never done the Get Organized course, you can feel free to again look for it in the e-learning and engage with that. All right. I will take it that everyone is good to go and no questions so far. Is the mic that's
Yeah, I
open?
think it's clear so far.
Okay, all right. Okay, so as we do that, I'm now going to switch over to, I'm going to stop the presentation and I'm going to switch over to Odoo. And like I said, the main focus of what I'm doing today is planning from a personal perspective, not so much from a departmental or an organizational perspective. Okay, please can just someone confirm that they can see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
All
we
right.
can see it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So the first thing, from a personal planning perspective, that I always do is I decide when I'm going to plan. So planning itself needs a time, a space, a date, an hour that you dedicate to it. If you don't actually make a time and a space in your world for planning, guess what? It never happens. So for me, I set aside time for planning. Maybe before I share my own schedule for planning, maybe let's have 2 or 3 people in the room, maybe share how do they set aside time for planning. Maybe if I can just have 1 or 2 people just share their own experience, especially those that have done the Get Organized course, because that's one of the things that it leads you to think about is when is good for you to do your planning as an individual.
Okay, from my end, I will say mainly late in the evenings when I've seen what the team is doing, and now I can plan ahead for the next day.
Okay. So yeah, so for you, evening planning works. You like to plan your next day at the end of the previous day. Okay, cool, cool. Thanks, Abby. Anybody else want to share when they do their planning, how they do their planning?
It's morning.
Morning,
Yes, I think on my side, I usually do it in the early hours of the day.
in the early hours of the day. Okay,
Yes,
so when you say
yes.
the early hours of the day, tell us a bit more.
Yeah, I usually do it around 6 a.m. Looking on the report for the previous day, what I did not finish yesterday, and what I ought to do in that day. In
Okay,
terms of prioritization.
okay. All right,
Yeah.
cool. Cool. Okay, thank you for sharing, Julius. One more person, anyone else want to share how they do their planning and what time they schedule to do their planning? Okay, I don't know whether that means that we're not setting aside time to do planning, but okay, let me share from my perspective how I schedule to do planning. So there's probably 3 types of planning that I do in my world. And I would want to encourage you to also think in terms of these time frames. Most of us so far have spoken about day planning, which is very, very, very important. For me, my energy levels are highest in the morning. So similar to Julius, my day planning, I usually do it in the morning. But I always like to start my planning from the perspective of the quarter or month, from a longer term perspective, like the quarter or month, and then I look at the week, and then I look at the day. So that's what I mean when I say I do 3 levels of planning. Why do I go from that outward sort of high level to maybe a more focused planning? It's usually because the goals and the things that I have to achieve from my exco and manager perspective, they usually are planned for in the medium to longer term. So in other words, there's goals that I've got to drive towards that are year long, that are quarter long, that are monthly, and so on. So I like to do a little bit of longer term planning. So first I start with looking at the quarter or the month, and I do what I call okay, the word is running away from me now, but basically where you identify the big things that you have to do, and you put them in place. So usually for me, that will be like things around, meetings, key meetings that I must have, key milestones that I must reach, and things that need to be achieved. And if I can just give you a glimpse of my calendar, because usually I do a lot of the sort of longer term planning, the 3 months and the 1 month planning, using my calendar, and I put the big rocks in place. By the way, there's a concept, I'm sure you've seen it demonstrated, where if you've ever been to a time management seminar, where the person will say, they will have a whole lot of rocks, stones, pebbles, sand, water on the table. And then they'll have this big jar. And then they'll say, how do you fit as many of these things into the big jar as possible? And what they will then start to do is they say you start with the big things first. So you start with the rocks, and then the jar gets full of big things, and then you put the pebbles. The pebbles tend to fall between the spaces of the rocks. Then you pour in the sand. The sand will fit in between the spaces between the rocks, the pebbles, and then you do the water, because the water then will fill in the spaces in between the sand and the pebbles. So that's how you fit as many things as possible into many rocks as possible into a jar. And basically they then say that's exactly how time management works. Time management works best when you fit in the big things first, then you fill in with the priority, next level of priority, then you fill in with the sand, which is the next level of priority, the smaller activities and tasks, and then you finally fill in with water, which is all the other things that you have to do. So again, so for me, I like to do, if you were to take a view of my calendar, okay, unfortunately you can't see a yearly view, but like if you have a look, I fit in all my, using my calendar, I fit in all my big rocks, as it were, using my calendar. And I do the major planning, and I do that at the beginning or just before the quarter begins, just so that I have an idea of where I'm going. Similarly, for a month, I do the same thing. I have a look at what is outstanding from the month previous based on my quarterly plan, and I try and have a view. So one of the things that you'll see is that already I've got things going on in my calendar into May and June and July, and actually even into the rest of the year. So I don't try to start planning when the thing is supposed to happen, right? I try and put my planning ahead of time. A lot of us, I find us running always on the urgent and important. When you find yourself in firefighting mode all the time, which is where you're always dealing with things that are urgent and important, it's a sign that you're not doing sufficient planning. Because what sufficient planning will do is it will help you to tackle things that are important before they become urgent. Let me say that again. If you're always finding yourself in firefighting mode, which is where you're dealing with urgent, important things all the time, it's because you're not doing sufficient planning. And when you do sufficient planning, you will always, well, not always, 90% of the time, you will manage to deal with the important things before they become urgent. So quarterly planning, monthly planning, and trying to forecast what might go on a little bit further into the future helps. It even helps from a resource allocation perspective, because at the end of the day, you're already thinking through what resources will I need in order to get this big thing done? What do I need to be doing? And this applies both at work, but it also applies in your personal life. And so I think these tips are not just for work situations, they're also for personal life situations. So I use my calendar. Okay, I'm showing you my Google Calendar because I've actually got a number of calendars. I've got an Odoo calendar, and my Odoo calendar feeds into my Google Calendar because I just like to see everything in one place, because I also have my own personal things that are going on, and I use my Google Calendar to aggregate all those things. But my Odoo calendar feeds into my Google Calendar, and I can see everything in one space. So, so the first part of my rhythm is quarterly, monthly planning. Then, in terms of weekly planning, I then also like to take time on a Sunday before the week starts to just kind of have a look at what's going to go on in my week and just set key things in place for the week. And usually I do that on a Sunday for a couple of hours, maybe 2 to 3 hours, just looking at my week, making sure that my calendar is updated, my calendars, because I've got multiples of them, are updated and they're reflecting what I'm going to be doing. But of course, as you and I know, even if you do a weekly plan, things change on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes you manage to achieve something on one day. Sometimes there are a couple of things that are still outstanding on that day that you need to push over to the next day. And in that regard, then the daily planning is also important, which is that time in the morning. For me, like I said, my energy is highest in the morning. So I review what was done the previous day, and then I look at what I need to do that particular day, and I adjust plans and I replan and I reprioritize for the day. Abigail said that her energy is highest at night. She likes to close off the day by checking what's been done and then making a plan for the next day. That all depends on how well you work best. And so again, Get Organized, the course on e-learning, I'll mention it again. It can really help you to just wrap your mind around what's your best times for planning. How are you best able to do your planning? So I think the issue of setting time to plan, I cannot overemphasize this, because this is actually where planning starts. If you don't set aside a clear rhythm and a clear time for yourself to plan when things are quiet for your own personal planning, this is not now planning with the team or planning with your fam. This is your own personal time to think through what's going on in your world, in your work, in your personal issues, in your particular tasks that you need to execute. If you don't make time for that, you will not be very successful, whether it's in work or in your personal life. Maybe I can take just a pause there. And maybe I saw Nyari come into the meeting. I just wanted to share just very briefly about routines, because I think some of us don't have routines and we find ourselves very disorganized on a daily basis. And there's a story that she has shared with me in the past about how she developed her own routines that put her mind into gear. Nyari, are you in the room?
I am. Good morning, everyone.
Morning. Please, can you just share whatever you feel capable to share around your story, around establishing routine in your life that then helped you to become more productive?
Okay. So I still do. I follow this this millionaire who started off working, and this was back when I was on Facebook. This gentleman used to work at a medium-sized firm in DC, and he was someone that I had actually met in person at a networking event. And so I started following him on LinkedIn, and I watched him move up in the ranks at the organization that he was at, and then he eventually, bought his own firm, and he's now a millionaire. So what he did was, every single morning, even up until the time that he had a lot of money and could afford, a house manager, a chef, and people that work for him, his thing was every single morning he had to get up, meditate. He got up, made his bed, meditated, jumped on his treadmill, and then had breakfast with boys before they set off for school. And then his day started. And this was Monday to Friday. So it was something that I started years ago. I hate making my bed, or I hated making my bed back then. And so I was a boarder, and they used to make us make our beds in a specific way. So I started making my own bed, and I was married, and my ex-husband is the one that used to make our bed. I started getting up in the morning, I made the bed, I would open up my Bible, do my devotional, take a quick walk around our neighborhood. I think it was about a 1.5K loop, take a shower, and then I'd sit in 2.5 hours of traffic going to work. During those 2.5 hours, I'd listen to different podcasts, various subjects. But then on my way home, I would always that were recorded. So, and I haven't realized it yet, but that's actually how my thing happened. I get up every morning, I make my bed, I sit in front of my Bible with my notebook, and then on days that I am able, I do a quick loop around my neighborhood, and then I take a shower, eat something, and my day starts. But like my weekday starts on a Sunday. My week starts on a Sunday. And the reason why it starts on Sunday is because I need to plan my week. And I'm very old fashioned in that I have 2 notebooks. I have a notebook for my personal stories, and then I have a notebook for work. And that notebook has actual check boxes. Like I make a square before I write something down. I carry that notebook in my bag, and as I remember stuff, I quickly jot them down, so that when I get back to my laptop, I then put stuff into my Google Calendar. But that's pretty much how my day goes. And literally, it doesn't matter how late I am, even if I just pull the covers across the bed, my bed has to look and feel made. Otherwise, my day just doesn't start well.
Thank you so much, Nyari, for sharing that. And all that I wanted to demonstrate through that is that the power of routine. When you don't have a routine, you tend to be disorganized. The other person that I know has got very powerful routines, maybe, and just ask them to speak very briefly about their routines. Mr. Dube, I know you're a routine person. Some people find it easier than others. Maybe it's a personality thing to make routines. But whether you find routines easy or you find them difficult, it's very critically important to establish certain routines that you do. Nyari talked about the routine of making her bed. That's become, it's actually interesting that if you read psychology, they do talk about how the mind, if you can give it certain structures that it works through, and you'll probably find that what happens is it's not just about making the bed. It's probably also about what she gets to think about while she's doing that routine. For some people, it's the routine of brushing their teeth. During that time of brushing your teeth, because it's a routine that you've established and you don't have to think about it, you might come up with your best ideas for the day while you're brushing your teeth. For some people, that routine is taking a walk. I know my father, he had a very powerful routine about walking, and some of his best ideas would come when he was walking every day. Some people, their routine is about when they sit down and drink their cup of coffee. During that routine of drinking the cup of coffee, some of their best planning gets done. So routine is a very powerful thing that we all need to develop. Let me give Mr. Dube 1 or 2 minutes to talk about his routine and why the power of routine is very important. Mr. Dube, are you there? You're muted if you are there. Okay, I don't think Mr. Dube is there. All right. Okay, so anyway, this is just to say it's powerful. Routines are very, very powerful. Maybe I can just take a moment to see whether there's anyone who may want to chip in at this point about their routines that they do. Something you share here might help somebody else. Anyone want to share about routine? Okay, if there's no one who wants to share about routine, I think we can, it looks like the Blaya team may have all dropped off. There seems to be maybe an issue. Right. Let's maybe now carry on in the last 25 minutes of the session with how to use Odoo to support these routines that we are doing, especially the routine of planning. Okay. I'm going to now switch over to my tab, so I will not be able to see anything on the screen. If you've got any comments, questions, please go ahead and open your mic and do so. So the first thing, like I said, is all of our tasks are grouped in projects. I'm not going to spend too much time on the project because the projects are things that you will find are probably quite already predefined in your department. Your department has certain projects that it works through and it works in. And so those projects are probably already predefined for the year or for the quarter. And so I'm not going to spend too much time on projects, except to say that just to remind us that according to our definition, a project is just a grouping of activities or tasks that are related and that achieve a particular end goal. The thing that you probably will engage with the most is tasks. So for most of us, there will be two types of tasks in our world. The first are tasks that have been created for us by department heads, EXCO members, or other people that, may be allocating activities to us to do. And remember that from a work perspective, these tasks are individual units of work that have been allocated to you for you to do and for you to accomplish. And so where I will start in terms of showing you is in your project, if you go to the menu item written tasks and you click on that menu item, it's going to bring up a whole lot of tasks. And the default in Odoo is that the tasks that will come up will be already filtered according to a filter called My Tasks, because the system already knows that probably when you come to this area of tasks, you're not just looking at everyone's tasks, because if I remove that filter, what I will be able to see is every single task in the organization. And if you check over here, at the moment, we have got 110,702 active tasks in the system. In other words, these are tasks that have not been archived. They're tasks that are currently so-called active. Maybe some of them need to be archived, but this would be an overall number of tasks for any one person to look at. So really, what is more useful is when you're entering this to be able to look at a filter called My Tasks, which is the tasks that are related to you. Let me also mention that you could also look at your followed tasks. Now, followed tasks are tasks that are not necessarily allocated to you. In other words, they don't have your name on them, but you might have an interest in that task, or you've been tagged by someone in that task because you have some input that you need to do into that task. So you can also include followed tasks in this because you might want to see tasks that you also follow. But in this particular case, I am tagged in way too many tasks that I follow. And so I'm going to just untick this followed tasks and just only look at tasks that have been allocated to me, since we're talking about individual tasks in this case. So that's where we start. Okay, so then the next thing that we want to do is once we've got your tasks, one of the things that I find quite useful is to group the tasks by project. Because as you can see here, in terms of tasks that have been allocated to me, apparently I've got 165 tasks that are allocated to me as an individual, okay? That I'm responsible over if there are group tasks. So again, looking at 165 tasks all at once may not be very, very easy. So one of the things that I would then do is to group these tasks by project. Okay, so what this basically does, if I group them by project, is now I can see which tasks I have, which are in which projects. And I did this, for example, on Sunday when I was doing my planning for the week, because I just wanted to understand, okay, what are the different things and the different groupings of tasks that I work on. So as you can see, I've got tasks under contract and supplier management. I've got tasks under DevOps, digital transformation, finance, management, strategic actions, marketing, process training, sales, Salesforce implementation, talent, and the Digital Village Pomona Industrial BPO Center. So this is where my different tasks and activities lie. But you might find that maybe your list of projects that you are involved with, or your list of task groupings that you're involved with, are more or fewer than this. It doesn't really matter. All that this view gives you is an idea of where your efforts are required. So when I do my weekly planning in particular, because the quarterly planning at the work level, it probably gets initiated by your department head or your manager or your ExCo member, and they will then cascade down to you some of the tasks that you are responsible for. And in that, you may have to cascade down to other people the tasks that they are responsible for. But one of the things that then, when you come down to your weekly planning or your daily planning, what I would normally do, let's say at the beginning of the week, is first of all, I'll group like this. Then what I'll also do is, one of the things that I'll do is I'll put two types of further filters. Okay, so one filter that I might do, and this is what I did actually first, was I said late tasks, because I wanted to see what tasks do I have that now have run their overdue date. Okay, and make sure that I plan to execute on those tasks. Make sure that I plan to finish or finalize those tasks because they're already late or overdue. And as you can see, once I apply that filter, that long list of tasks, 165 tasks, comes down to 10. So I've got 10 tasks that are already running overdue. Okay, so as a matter of urgency, that's where I need to start in terms of addressing and planning for and scheduling the work that I need to do in the week, in this particular week, in order to try to clear these tasks as much as possible. So that's one filter that I do at the beginning of the week when I'm trying to plan. Another thing that I would do is, because you don't just want to plan for late tasks, because now you're being reactive. Remember, we said that if you're always firefighting, and when I am dealing with late tasks, I am now firefighting, right? This is now firefighting mode, because I'm dealing with tasks that are already urgent and important. In other words, they've now overrun. Now there's an urgency around achieving this task. So it's not enough to just look at late tasks. We don't want to always be reacting. We actually want to be proactive. Okay, so the other filter that I ran, which you're not going to find automatically, because these filters that I've done so far, these ones are filters that are already predefined for you. But one of the things that you can learn very powerfully to do in Odoo is to learn to use the custom filters function, which you will find in absolutely every model or module in Odoo. There's not a single module in Odoo where you will not find this custom filter function. And if you learn to use it, you will learn how to ensure that you actually use the system very powerfully to bring out information. So the other thing that I did was I went to the custom filters and I went to the deadline date and I said, okay, show me the tasks where the deadline is. So I wanted to see all the tasks that are due before the end of this week. So remember, this was at the beginning of the week, it was Sunday. And I wanted to see all the tasks that are due before the end of this week. So I then put a filter there because again, I don't want to be firefighting all the time. Turns out that there were no tasks that were due before the end of this week, other than the ones that I already was late to do. So what I actually did was I then had a look at, let me also be proactive and say, what are the tasks that are due before the end of the month so that I can even start to plan for those. So again, I ran another filter where deadline is before or equal to. Deadline is before or equal to. Actually, I think the last filter that I did was wrong because I said deadline is equal to 23. But what I actually wanted was deadline is before or equal to, let's try that one again, 23. Okay, okay, it's still the same 10 overdue tasks. Okay, so there were no additional ones. And then I ran another query to say deadline is before or equal to 30th because I wanted to see what's due for me by the 30th. And as you can see, I've got 19 tasks that are due for me before the 30th of the month. And so I can now go one by one, scheduling and planning each of these tasks, both the overdue ones. And as you can see here, if you open up your task list, it'll show you which tasks are already overdue. You can sort like that, which tasks have run over their date and by how much over are they, and which tasks are still in the future. So these ones are they expire, like they deadline on the 30th. So I still have a few days to get those done, but I shouldn't wait until the 30th in order to plan, because that's the whole point of planning, right? Is you want to get a sense of, you want to get ahead of what you need to do instead of reacting over time. Are there any questions at this point in terms of the filtering of tasks, looking at tasks that you've got? Maybe before I take questions and comments, let me very quickly run through what is in a task, just so that we're all clear what is in a task and what functions are there and what you need to be paying attention to. So a task will have the project that it's in, which tells you what grouping or goals that task is related to. It will tell you, let's just skip this worksheet template for now. It will also tell you who it's assigned to. And so in this case, obviously, we're interested in looking at tasks that are assigned to us. If it's related to a customer, it will have the customer name. So for those departments that are outward facing, like billing, customer service center, etc., it might have the customer that it's related to there. Otherwise, if it's an internal related task, it will have the contact name of the person internally who is responsible for that task. So in this case, myself. And the only reason why it has my contact, which has my Gmail address, is because I want to receive it on my Gmail in order for me to rate it. Okay. It'll have the parent task. Remember, I talked about that there are tasks and there are subtasks. So if your task is a subtask of another task, you will find that it is got a parent task. And all this allows us to do is to relate the work that we are doing to the work maybe that is being done at a departmental level, and ultimately to the work that is being done at an organizational level. So what you're going to find with most of the tasks that you are allocated to do in your department, in your organization, is that they cascade. there's a hierarchy of parent tasks that are above. Like, for example, if I go into this parent task of this task, what you will see is that this parent task has got a parent task of its own called management accounts. And if I go into management accounts, this parent task has got a parent task of its own called finance goals, number one, EBITDA. And if I go into finance goals, EBITDA, it ultimately sits in a project called Management Strategic Activity Tracker. So you'll find that most of the tasks that we're going to do, I won't say all of them, but 90 to 95% of the tasks that we do should all be cascading from higher level tasks that are related to the highest level tasks, which are tasks that relate to our Telco 1058 strategy. So I'll go back now, and you can use breadcrumbs to go back. Okay. Your task will have a deadline date. This is very important because this tells you when this item is due. And you do not want to wait until the item is due for you to start engaging with it. And so you are able to schedule activities, various kinds of activities. You can schedule to-dos for yourself. You can schedule reminders for yourself in order to ensure that you do not forget to attend to this thing before the due date. It will also have a description. What is the task that you're supposed to do and how are you supposed to do it? So the description usually will be here. Under timesheets tab, it will also have what's called initially planned hours, which is a forecast of the time that it is going to take in total for you to accomplish this task. And this initially planned hours is just a guideline to say, in the week, in the month, in the time that this task is to be done, how long should it take in terms of actual hours, working hours that you're going to be doing? Excuse me. And as you can see, when you capture your timesheets, your informative timesheets, you're going to capture them against this task, and it's going to attribute them to this task. By the time that you're done with this task, it should give an accounting to say, of the 24 hours that were initially planned, it actually ended up taking you 21 hours, or it eventually ended up taking you 48 hours, maybe took you double the time to get this task done. These initially planned hours are usually set based on standards that you've got in your department. So for example, if you've got a capturing job in the finance department, this 24 hours is based on, let's say, it takes 1 minute or 2 minutes to capture a transaction, and you've got 1,000 transactions to capture usually in a month. And so that estimate is based on the number of hours that it takes to do certain units of work. And this is something that you and your department head would deliberate on and collaborate on to say how much time allocation in the total time allocation of your work time, your 8 hours in 6 days, etc., would be allocated to this. So this is what a task would look like. This is what it would comprise of. These are the major things that you need to check. Also, a task might have a checklist against it. Not every task will have a checklist against it, but some tasks may have a checklist against it. And that checklist is just designed to help you to work through the task in a way that will ensure that you've covered all the aspects of the task. Are there any questions about what I've covered in terms of tasks, how you filter for them, how you look at them, etc.? And then I'm going to go into the last bit, which is scheduling the tasks and how I would schedule my tasks, given that now I know what is important for me to do. I've got 19 things I must cover before the end of this, according to my filters, obviously. I've got 19 things that I must cover before the 30th of April. Some of them are already overdue. Some of them are still yet to be due. But I need to be working on everything in order to ensure that I meet deadlines. Any questions or comments at this stage before I cover the last bit of how to schedule?
Thank you. I'll say the filters really shows or go a long way now in assisting us in leveraging the system. I see it's eye-opening to see how we're not using the system to get some stuff done.
Yeah, absolutely, Abby. I really encourage everyone to engage with filters, because filters really actually help you. And like I said, they're there in every single module in Odoo. Whatever kind of information that you're trying to get out of the system, there's a filter there that you can use to actually help you to get that information out. And also this aspect of grouping information, again, is another powerful way of being able to see information in a way that will help you to deal with it. So you can group information in many different ways, and by grouping it, it also then helps you to organize your life, organize your information in a way that allows you to deal with it very easily. So thank you for that observation, Abby. Any other comments or questions? Yes, go ahead. Whoever's opened their mic. Sorry, Mr. Dube, you are very far away. Could you get closer?
Am I closer now?
Yes, you are.
Okay, I was saying if you could kindly go back to the timesheet. You're showing us the task there, and one of the last things was description and timesheet. I've got a question on that. Because I saw that yes, it's already populated there under timesheet. I think there are three lines that I can see. I wanted to find out where that is coming from. Is it coming from the timesheet itself, or is it coming from subtasking?
Okay, it's coming from the timesheets. So from every task that you do, you can capture the timesheets in one of two ways. You can either start the timer on the task, and it will automatically create a timesheet against the task. And then when you're done, excuse me, when you're done with the task, you can start it like that. See, it creates a clock as you're working on that task. When you're done, you can actually stop the clock. And what it then does is it brings up a box like this, and you can say, I was capturing 200 transactions. Okay, I'm just going to say that so that I know that this was not a real timesheet. Okay, and then you can see that it puts it against there. Or you can go to your normal timesheet timesheet module, and you can say you can start a timesheet. Again, you can do the same thing, capturing transactions, right? And then you can allocate it to the task, the task that you're working on. Okay, I think it was this one. All right. And then again, when you finish this timesheet, it will create the timesheet line. Obviously, you want it to be informative and specific and very detailed, and it will create the timesheet. Now, if we go back to that task, this one here, if you go back to that task, guess what? There we go. So remember that the system is one integrated whole, and everything that's in the system is related. So what you do in the timesheet module will end up showing up in this module because they are related.
Thank you. That's clear.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you for this session. Maybe another emphasis on our timesheets or on our tasks, where maybe someone is doing, for example, let's say capturing of a cash book, emphasis on making sure that you are selecting a task that is in your name, not a general task.
Correct.
where we
So
end up having information in other.
other
Yes.
people's what providers mentioned is critically important, team, because this is how we're going to track your productivity. If your timesheet ends up in somebody else's task, it's not going to be attributed to your task. So I'm going to just take an example. Let's say I'm Cephas and I have got a task to capture, let's see, okay, let me see. I've got a task that is assigned to me to capture, I just want to see Cephas's tasks, to capture creditors' reconciliations, right? To do creditors' reconciliations. When I am doing creditors' reconciliations, I must make sure that I am capturing my timesheets against my creditors' reconciliations for March, against my creditors' reconciliations task. If I don't do it against my creditors' reconciliations for March, it's going to land up somewhere else. And when it comes time for Provide or whoever it is that allocated this task to close this task, number one, what it's going to do, let me show you, is if I try and move it to done without any timesheets, it should complain. It's going to hopefully complain. Oh no, it didn't complain. Why did it not complain? Not sure why it didn't complain. Okay, oh, hold on, maybe it's the last stage. Okay, here we go. You cannot fully close this task if it's got no timesheets. It'll give you an error which says, please capture work done timesheets before moving to the closed or done stage. So it will not allow us to close this timesheet without with this task without timesheets attached to it, number one. And number two, this is how your department head will quality assure what you did on this task, is by knowing what you did, how long it took you, and they'll read through your timesheets and they must sign your timesheets before they finalize them. If they've not signed them, then this timesheet cannot be done and it cannot be moved to the rated stage. So this is very, very important. Thank you for bringing that up, Provide. Any other questions around tasks?
Okay, I think the other one related to Provide, it will be important for us to pick the correct project or the correct task before we do timesheets. I think yesterday when I was checking, I saw that already their timesheets populated to April 2023 management accounts. So yeah, I think I spoke to Michelle and Oge to it populated the timesheet under that project to say
Okay.
we're not yet in April, so populate it under March.
So if you're still doing the March management accounts, populate to the correct task in March. If you're now doing April, populate to April. So again, like Abigail is saying, critically important that you pick the correct project and the correct tasks to populate your timesheets against. If you're not sure, it's best always to what? To ask. Ask your department head. If they're not sure, they will escalate the question to the person who can help them to resolve it. So 100% thank you, Abby, for that observation. I want to finish off this, we're already running into overtime. Allow me to just finish the last thing on scheduled items so that people can go. And then if anyone wants to ask me questions, I'll still stick around for a few more minutes and answer questions. Okay, so the last thing that I do is once I'm clear on what are my tasks that I need to do, you remember I put those filters and I wanted to see, for example, my late tasks. Now I want to schedule them for the week. And remember, at the beginning of the session, I said why it's important for us to work within Odoo is that we want to create visibility. Visibility means we want people around us, including our department heads, other department heads, EXCO members, peers, to be able to have clarity about what we are busy with on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. Because at an organizational level, coordination and collaboration matters. So what am I going to do? I'm next going to schedule my work. And this visibility is not about hierarchy. Anyone can go and look at my visibility this week. What am I busy with? You can look at it in two ways. Number one, you can go to my calendar. The Odoo calendar is visible to everybody. What is so-and-so doing? What is so-and-so doing? Why is that important? Because often, like when we set up meetings, I always say to people, please go and check my calendar and see if there's anything there so that you can schedule the meeting. So it's important from a coordination perspective, but secondly, it's also important just from a transparency perspective. We all must be productive. We all are working. We're all here because we're here for Telco 1058. So everyone should be able to see what I'm up to whatever extent. So at the end of the day, we can now go to the forecasting. So if I choose a particular task, this one, capture journals and reconcile balances, I need to, and this is what I did at the beginning of this week, is I sat down and I said, okay, when am I going to be able to engage with this task? Now, when I think about a task like this, usually this kind of task about capturing journals and reconciling balance sheets, it's a task that I need to really apply my mind to. So the time slots that I'm going to pick for dealing with this task are time slots where I know I'm not going to be disturbed, because it's not the kind of task I can work on in between talking to people. So you'll find that this task, I'll either do it very early in the morning, like it was scheduled for me to do very early this morning between 7 and 8, or you'll find that I'll do it quite late at night. So for example, today it was scheduled for 5 to 8 a.m. and also for 7:30 to 8:30 p.m. So I'll find time slots that I can actually engage with this task, because I know it's an intensive activity where I'm not going to likely be disturbed. Other tasks you'll find maybe like administrative tasks like emails and WhatsApps, because I've got a task around emails and WhatsApps as well. And these are tasks that I'll do in between things and so on. And I can slot them 30 minutes here, 1 hour there, etc. So when you then do your scheduling, basically what this means is you either get to your scheduler through, I'm sure you've seen here this button that's written forecast on your task. You can also get to it through the planning module, and you can add, I've already added 2, but you can add you pick your name. Please pick name. Do not start creating new names. Pick your name, okay? Pick your role, which is already supposed to be there. Don't start creating new things, please, 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 please. Okay, already it will have populated the project and the task because I'm creating it from within the task. If I create it from the planner, I will then have to pick the project and the task. So what I recommend highly to you is do this forecasting scheduling through the task, okay? And then you set your date, okay? I want to do this on today, Friday. I want to do it from 10 on Friday until 11. Okay, from 10 start time until 11, that's the end time. Okay, apply and publish. Okay, and then you see it adds it to my scheduler. So now I can see for this task specifically, I can see where I've planned to do it, right? In these time slots here. If I want to go and see what my entire week scheduler looks like, I'll go to planning, the planning tool. Okay, and then I go to my planning, and now it will show me every single thing that I have planned from the different tasks. And if you hover over them, it will show you information about which project is it, what task is it, what time is it planned for, how long is it planned for, and so on. So you can go hovering, seeing what I've planned to do. Where you see your task having a red triangle in the corner, it means you have planned something where something else is already planned. So this is a useful feature on our Odoo because it says one other shift for this employee at the time, because it helps us to not have clashes. So let's say you planned to have a meeting that falls under a particular task, and at the same time someone else plans the same thing for you, immediately it's going to pop this thing up saying one other shift for this employee at the same time. That gives you the opportunity to then reschedule, right? If it's got the orange triangle against it, it's because some changes from what was originally done and published, it's been changed. So again, it'll pop up an orange triangle. The orange triangle just is informational, doesn't necessarily mean you have to do anything. It just means just be aware that there's been changes to this particular scheduled task from the last time that it was created. Okay. All right. So this is this can move things. Let's say I'm not able to do this at this time. I can move it to tomorrow at the same time. And you see, I've now deconflicted it because you saw there that it was a red triangle. It was conflicted. Okay. I can move it to there. Okay. These ones, there's a conflict there. So it means I need to deconflict these still. Okay. So any questions about the scheduler? How to schedule your tasks and how to create visibility for the rest of the organization. Again, I cannot overemphasize how important it is for us to do these things. This is the way that we have decided as an organization through Odoo that we're going to track and manage everything. Yes, go ahead, whoever's got their mic open, but you're feeding back to us.
Oh, okay. I wanted to check on publishing. If you don't publish, is there any challenge or everything was supposed to publish?
Try and publish. Why? Okay. Because when it's not published, it means it's in draft format. It means that it's not a firm thing. Okay. If it is a firm thing, publish it. Why? Because you want to make sure that then that time slot is allocated to that thing. Because if then someone else comes along, if they see it in an unpublished state, they'll be like, okay, this is something that the person's thinking of doing, but it's not really something that they're really doing. So I can actually I can publish something else in that same time slot. So what published means is that this is a firm plan. This is something that is scheduled to happen. Whereas when it's unpublished, it's still in a maybe tentative state.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Any other comments or questions at this point? This meeting was supposed to run until 9:30. If you need to leave the meeting, please go ahead and leave the meeting. I will share the recording. And then from here, any questions or comments, I'll stick around for another 2 minutes to answer any questions or comments. Otherwise, thank you very much for attending this session. Hopefully it's been very helpful to you.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
It was very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. Thank you, Jumi, for this. Good day.
Good day.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the helpful insights. Good day.
You're welcome.
Thank you to me. Thank you so much.
All right, pleasure. Have a good day.
Thank you to me. Well understood. We'll apply all that information.
Thanks, Lee. Have a good day.